I believe that the first seminar I did, I have to remember which of the two it was. I think it was one of the most expensive ones. It was the $15,000 one, and this was back in the 80s. We were charging $15,000 and $20,000 back when the average seminar was $500. Big difference.
Put yourself in the peak state and help me welcome J. Abraham. Here we go.
But I did it because I went through a divorce.
Looking good, sir.
I stopped working. I was making millions of dollars when I started, and I owed millions of dollars when I stopped. And I'd had fun because I met and I married a younger wife, and we had a fun time trying to navigate the divorce.
Didn't hear that, did you? And that was a crucial piece of information.
And I wanted to reconnect with what had made me at that time great.
I'm pointing it.
Point the direction of the screen you want to change, which is over here.
Okay, okay, whoops, excuse me, all right.
I wasn't really used to doing seminars.
My dramatic opening was just blown, but that's okay.
I never felt comfortable.
I would like it on both screens temporarily. I don't know how to signal, but I think that both people should see this. This is crucial.
I would fire myself if I were my own client.
This is a big beginning. I'm going to explain myself in about 3 minutes, and then I'm going to give you the biggest, most sinewy data dump of my whole life.
Well, let me tell you the good news. In the first 2.5 years, we did $250 million. And I think we had less than 2% ask for their money back.
So a man marries his woman. They every Sunday have roast beef. She starts by making the roast. She cuts off both ends, puts it in the pot, bakes it, serves it. After a couple of years, he asks, well, why do you do that? She says, because my mom did that. And they went to her mom, and they said, well, why do you do it that way? She goes, because my mom did that. Her mom, 97 years old, was still alive. And they said, great-grandma, why do you do that? And she goes, well, when we used to live on whatever, I had such a small pan, I had to cut off the ends because it wouldn't all fit. That's almost the analogy of how most people in business operate.
I had a very logical, pragmatic understanding of voids. What's wrong with this picture?
So your only advantage is whether or not plus or minus 20% you're more effective, more efficient, more astute. That's the only distinction you can have if you're all doing the same thing the same way.
There was no bullshit, excuse my vulgarity.
My purpose here is to give to all of you the understanding, the ability, the comprehension of how to take whatever it is you've got or you're going to have and get the absolute most out of it. The most enjoyment, the most revenue, the most profitability, the most net worth, the most control, the most everything.
It can't fail. And it was very powerful, very, very powerful.
He has a very nonlinear brain. He looks at a problem in a way that no one else on earth does.
His biggest philosophy is, how can you be a sticker on an envelope with a postage stamp paid by somebody else that will reach to exactly the same place where you also want to go, but at a fraction or no cost.
I am extraordinarily pleased to have the next presenter.
The man I'm going to bring up to you now is a force of nature in a different way. He's going to be more like drinking out of a fire hose again.
I've listened to all of Jay's stuff. I love Jay. I think he's the best in the world.
He is a marketing genius.
And he's just a marketing master.
And every time I listen to his material, I get new ideas on marketing.
He's known as the $9.4 billion man.
Life is a series of mentors, and Jay Abraham is absolutely the best.
He's worked in over 465 different industries.
He's been responsible now for working with 10,000 different businesses in 400 different industries.
And so with great pleasure, I want to introduce Mr. Jay Abraham.
Jay Abraham, give it up for him, ladies and gentlemen.
A genius is someone, I think, that can take thoughts to another level. And Einstein said imagination was more important than knowledge. So he embodies that to me.
I think I kind of define Jay not as a one single line, or not as a two single line, not as a plus. For me, it's much more like a star. right? 5 people or 10 people will draw their star differently, right? But ultimately it will still look like a star, right?
I believe that every human being in existence anywhere in the world has innately embedded in their DNA the desire for greatness. A great human being, a great performer, a great entrepreneur, a great CEO, a great manager, a great team member, a great husband, a great father, a great lover, a great contributor to the world. Whatever it is, there's probably 8 different categories that it flows through. And yet, if you look at reality, I doubt if 3% of all humanity even comes close to greatness in what they do in any of those 8. And you wonder why. Haven't you wondered why? See, I've been wondering why every night. I'm tormented. First of all, no one shows them and tells them what greatness in each of those categories is supposed to look like, feel like, function like in their mind, their heart, their soul, what it's supposed to resonate back like when they achieve it with the other person. Because the greatness they want can't be vacuum. You say, I'm great. No one knows it, but I'm great. Now, that could be an affirmation that you do, but I'm talking about the kind of greatness that is affirmed and appreciated, respected, and admired. So if you don't know what it's supposed to look like, feel like, what changes you have to make here, and what monitoring you have to do out there to make sure you're in alignment of personifying it, how could you expect to achieve it, right? You can't grow if you don't keep expanding your horizons beyond the rigidity of whatever it is you do.
Remember those simple rules, and you'll get along in the business world.
God wants you to be rich. And the premise is you can't touch a lot of people unless you have the resources. I think you have to find higher goals and worthier goals than the limited ones most people pursue. When you realize how much more is possible, the question that you need to ask is not, am I worthy of this goal? Can I really keep the business going? Can I make a living that's going to give me the retirement I want? Can I build the business so it has any asset value? The right question is this limited goal worthy of me? Not am I worthy of the goal?
I have a Kung Fu school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A little background, it's a part-time business right now. I'm a full-time engineer during the day. Then the school starts at 6 p.m., basically runs to 9 o'clock.
I've heard Jay talk from stage and do presentations where people ask him questions. And what's fascinating about Jay is that he'll have a number of people on different mics waiting to ask him a question, and each person asks a completely different question about their situation or issues or goals in the business they've got.
What I'm having problems is trying to make a transition from my engineering job to a full-time Kung Fu school when I really don't have enough time, I guess, or resources at the time.
Define what your mind is seeing when you say I don't have enough time or enough resources. What do you really mean?
You can see that he, when he's actually relating to you and your problems, he's not self-referential at all. He is all the way over into you and your situation, your problem, as if he was dealing with it.
I've had schools contact me, companies contact me for during the day jobs, but I can't take them because I'm working.
And then he's got access to his previous, multiple companies he's ever worked with, multiple industries. So he's got a whole store of information about, well, these 20 things worked in that situation. Let me tell you about that in the past, and I would adjust it this way.
So I believe that what happens in our life, 2% are the result of acts of God or the equivalent. They're things we have no control over. So have you tried to go on Craigslist or go in the paper or go on?
I haven't tried to actually hire a teacher that way.
Tsunamis, birth defects.
I guess the style of Kung Fu that I teach, it's a little bit different than a lot of different styles.
98% of the good or the bad are the result of actions we take or don't.
What I need to do is I need these 4 instructors. I wish 2 of them work first shift, 1 works second shift, and 1 works third shift. I wish I could get them into teaching at the school during the day.
Decisions we make or don't. A lot of times we think we've done everything we can when we've done almost nothing. Factors, forces, predictable elements that are immutable that we either fail to recognize or recognize and fail to harness. I mean, you're impugning that there's no one else in all of Milwaukee who could be, but you found 4 people. Change your strategy, you change your results. Where'd you find those 4?
Well, I trained them from the beginning.
But you're telling me, I'm not trying to I don't want you to beat the shit out of me, but you're saying, on the one hand, I can't train people, and now you just told me you trained 4 people.
No, I guess I could train some.
Prior to doing seminars, I was fascinated by people that didn't take the kind of actions they could. And I'm not trying to fight you, I'm trying to get you to fight out of your mental model. I would say it takes a long time to learn how to do what I do the way I do it, wouldn't you?
I would say yes.
But if I had 1,000 people in the seminar, you would have seen 100 people that are doing their version of J. Abraham successfully. Mm-hmm. Now, are they doing it the way I would do it? Maybe not. But are they helping people? Mostly, yes.
You'll learn by listening to Jay that there's no relationship between being good and getting paid. You can be really great at what you do, but if you don't learn how to position and how to market yourself, it's not going to happen. And so there is a great relationship between being a good marketer and getting paid.
I live in Los Angeles, and I remember every time I would drive to LAX where we did our programs, I would go down Pacific Coast Highway, and I would see thousands of these little mom and pop stores, service companies, and their signage was terrible, and their processes were terrible, and they didn't understand the psychology or the strategy of business attraction. I was always driven on trying to help people work on the geometry of their business.
The beauty of geometry.
Because it's easier than growing a business linear or incrementally. So I envision most people's businesses as this. If you can see it, I call it the diving board theory of business. And what it is really in truth is that I see most businesses having one primary source or driver, and that's the base that supports it. And the top, the board, is the revenue it generates. And I call it the diving board theory because if anything goes wrong with your primary source of dependency, your business is compromised. So what I try to do is get everyone I work with to build, that's not very pretty, a Parthenon that adds other means of accessing the market that will complement in one respect or penetrate niches or gaps in the other respect.
They open the door to new markets for additional goods and services to challenge the imagination.
And if each of these only produced 10% more,
you just went exponential.
It's the ultimate multiple faceted positive Chinese water torture. And you're hitting different people from different vantage points.
You know, as a medical professional, we're not schooled in matters of marketing or advertising. It's just not what we did. But if you looked at what was happening in the world, it became obvious that it was good to do. And I called Jay and I said, "Do you do consultations?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Well, I'd like to have a consultation with you." He says, "Okay, that's fine." He says, "By the way, I charge $2,000 an hour." Now, this was in 1988. And I said, "Okay." And then he says, "But if you'll allow me to use the concepts that we develop in marketing and share them with other non-competing, professionals, I'll charge you $1,000 for the hour."
Probably 20 years ago, I read one of J. Abraham's $500 books. And I remember telling myself, I'm so getting my money back.
So I tell this to a friend of mine who's a very experienced businessman, And he said, what's he going to charge you? I said, $1,000. He says, can I go with you? I got to see this guy. Anybody that can charge that for an hour's worth of advice, he says, I got to see this.
But I read it. I'm like, you know what? This is a really good book, and it seems like a lot of work to return it, so I never did. And I kept it. And some of the ideas around having a fiduciary responsibility for your customer, just always having that level of integrity, really stuck with me as I was growing Bulletproof. So he's kind of this marketing figure that influenced thousands of other companies.
He said, but you should also bring someone with you, a secretary and a recording little device so we can get the most out of it. I said, okay, fine. Jay's idea, the key concept that he advanced, he said, develop a video. Now, this was in 1988. And those time, videos were how people obviously got their information, not off the internet. And he said, offer it free, take out an ad in Los Angeles Magazine. And he said, I think that's going to be helpful. He says, it will be what we call a lead generator. Well, it sure was.
He looks at your business and kind of turns his head sideways and says, what if you did this? And you're like, how did I never think of that?
And we spent a lot of time and money on it, but it was worth it. We had a good product, and the fact was that it did exactly what we wanted.
He's solved so many problems in the past that it just comes out immediately. And it's so advanced that you have to actually just sit back, write it down, and go home and just think about it for a while. And it usually hits me about a day or 2 days later. And he's like your kooky uncle who's just crazy but a genius. He's like Mr. Magoo.
He's helped me negotiate just random terms on investment deals where no one's ever asked for that term, but you're like, wait, that's going to be really valuable for me, and the investors don't care. So he just extracts value from things, and he does it just natively.
It generated a lot of leads into our practice. It was extremely successful. And obviously it proved to me that here was a guy that knew his stuff, and it was the best investment I ever made in terms of the time and money I spent. And it started a long-term relationship.
I brought one of my dearest friends and a man I have enormous respect for. This is a gentleman who is a marketing legend. In fact, what made him a marketing legend was he really started out early in his career and decided he wanted to do something unique. He wanted to work with every different type of industry possible and see if he couldn't find unrealized, opportunities for these organizations, revenue opportunities, ways to enhance performance. And the secret to Jay Abraham is that literally all over the world, he's worked with, and we'll have to ask him how many industries it is now. I have to get it updated, but I'm sure it's more than 1,000 industries. And what he's done is cross-pollinated. He's discovered that, for example, in the real estate industry, everybody markets the same way. They put out their ads, they do open houses, and they do the same fundamental things as everyone else. And if you go to a different industry, they don't do anything like that. They do something else. They go to trade shows. And what he did best was, by working with so many different organizations, he saw that if you compete with other people and you do the same thing they're doing, and you do it better, you have a tiny competitive advantage. But if you do something no one else is doing, you have an extraordinary competitive advantage.
If you look at Federal Express, it was built by borrowing the hub and spoke distribution system that the Federal Reserve Bank used to clear a check overnight. Rogaine, Viagra came from a totally different purpose. Viagra was from a product that was developed for heart.
Here, maybe a diagram will help.
Rogaine was pimples.
Well, I was told it had something to do with pimples and stuff.
No.
Fiber optics, which was the breakthrough in telecommunications.
Hello, yes, this is Mary. How are you?
It was created for aerospace. Either the ballpoint pen or roll-on deodorant, one of the two borrowed the technology from the other.
Fresh roll-on, creamier and always on the ball.
The breakthroughs usually come from outside your industry. Now going back to my start, something else that has forged me, 3 convergent factors. I got married the first time 18. Had no knowledge, no education, got married, had 2 children. By 20, the needs of somebody 40, the world didn't care. The only jobs I could get were people who would not give me salaries. Most were crazed entrepreneurs who gave me percentages of results from whatever I did. When you only eat when you earn, you figure out what works well and what doesn't. I had always had an outrageous curiosity. When I was very young, married, and before I started working with entrepreneurs, I went to entrepreneurs in my city, Indianapolis, and I persuaded some of the most inventive ones to let me sit in their office all day long and just observe them do business. I wasn't a threat. And I would work 2 or 3 nighttime jobs, and my then wife thought I was crazy, and I wouldn't wish it on most people. But I got to watch all these meetings conducted, all these conversations on the phone, and when they were done, they would debrief, and when we were in meetings, people would look at me and they wouldn't acknowledge who I was.
You know you shouldn't do that, Jimmy.
Do what? It was great training, but I got this great education. One of the things that happened as I started aligning with entrepreneurs, I realized in retrospect that people in one industry don't have a clue how people in another unrelated industry think, their ideas on strategy, how they access their market, what kind of marketing approaches they use. I started off when I was 18, I was, of all things, a cost accountant. I was a junior cost accountant, but it was very interesting. I worked in a very large factory of a very large corporation that made road graders they were sending overseas in the Vietnam War. And I learned through cost accounting a couple of things. I learned how people establish the average cost of production for something, how they establish labor, all the factors that went into production and all the things. I learned about quality control. I learned about how stupid people are in inventory control. Any of you in manufacturing, when manufacturing doesn't keep good inventory control, and you got $1 million road grader on the line and you don't have any screws to put it together with, there are all these neat companies that come into play that specialize on having all these fasteners and screws in stock that you normally would order in 1,000 and 10,000 unit quantities, but because you run out, you go to these companies. We had a company we dealt with called Service Supply, and their moniker was they were the house of a million screws. And it was a really funny name. And they specialized that anything you wanted that you ran out of, they had, except for instead of paying 10 cents for a hex head nut, you'd pay $10. But are they still in business? Are they? But I learned how stupid people can be on inventory control, and I learned what an opportunity that creates. And I decided that something as common as dirt in one industry could be applied to a totally different one that didn't know it. I'll tell you another one that's really interesting. So I was also in the 8-track, which is, it's dating me, but the 8-track cassette tape business, and I had no money. So I've always been taught by my mentors, your problem is the solution to somebody's bigger problem. So I lived in Indianapolis, and I found a chain of convenience stores like 7-Eleven, but it was local. They had 50 stores. They weren't selling 8-track tapes in their store. So I went and I said, if I can get 8-track tapes and cases on your counters and you don't pay a cent, will you take 1/3 of that and give me 2/3? And I showed them that we could test it and they could take it out. And I got contracts, first of all, in hand, paper in hand, signed. Then I found a very large manufacturer distributor of 8-track tapes in the Midwest who didn't have Indiana penetration. I took my agreements, I had no money, and I got them to send me $200,000 worth of cases and tapes that I put in my garage. Then I got my brother and I bought him a beat-up $500 Chevy Biscayne.
So you bought a car for $500?
Yeah.
Okay.
That one day we drove around the corner and the wheel fell off. But before that happened, it was our delivery.
That is the power of broke.
And his job for $500 a week was to take inventory, replace defective ones, and get an invoice that he could send to corporate. I was making $4,000 a week. This is fabulous information. It's changed my whole life. From no capital, no anything.
You were leveraging.
Yeah.
Can't stop, won't stop. Can't stop.
Jay still is one of the most brilliant minds on the planet when it comes to possibilities and making connections, and not just connections and like introductions, but connections have you ever thought of? That might be what should be on that man's tombstone. Have you ever thought of?
Recapping the game so far, Don, they've really been pounding on Shaq tonight. Looks like this is where he hurt his back. We'll have to see how he's going to play the second half.
With strength, the strength of the new Icy Hot back patch. Relief that's strong enough for me. Introducing the new...
So the first thing I ever did that was a success was a product called Icy Hot. Today you see Shaq promoting it. It used to be a mail order product. I was with a firm, a brilliant man that taught me a lot, and his strategy was to buy old-time, third-generation patent medicine companies.
New Allerest time capsules.
That sold almost totally by mail order, where the third-generation children got it and they didn't even want it and they had not put any money back and they'd milked it and it was almost dead. Ethical leverage. I stand for discovering all the hidden assets, tangible and intangible. He would buy it so low because they didn't know the resale value of all their equipment because they were not even utilizing it. Overlooked opportunities. They didn't know the value of their building. Underperforming activities. He would buy it on an option and he would first find out what he could sell the equipment for. Underutilized distribution channels, what he could sell or lease the building for. And my job is to connect them, but to then infuse them with an ideological belief system that drives it to greatness. And when he closed, he normally made a profit up front. I teach only upside leverage. That he would take this product, because he had a big manufacturing plant in Indianapolis that did all kinds of combinations of chemical products that were easy to formulate.
The man that owned Icy Hot hated high-tech transactions. He hated complicated things.
I hate dangerous leverage.
Preferably he wanted chemical businesses that were highly marginable, highly reconsumptive, where you bought it, you used it up, you resold it. You bought it, you used it up, you resold it. You bought it, you used it up, you resold it.
So one of the companies he bought was called Icy Hot.
Count on it.
And he was going to actually consolidate it and close it until he looked at the buying history of the remaining buyers, clients that he had, and it was shocking.
I didn't realize it until this fellow that I worked for, who was very bright, told me. He said, you got to understand. He's talking about residual-based annuities. He said, we've got them until either A, they come up with a cure for arthritis, or they die.
Almost all of the existing ones were buying every month at least one jar. About half of them were buying every month one jar and at least one other product from the catalog. Almost a fourth of them were buying twice a year bulk rate to give away to friends. And the bottom line was they were worth $50 to $75 a year in profit. And that's from initially buying a $3 product.
A lot of the time in sales, we approach somebody by saying, like, this is the one thing we have to offer you. But what he approached me with was saying, the way you want to communicate with your subscribers is not just, here I am to help you with your job hunt, but is to say, I'm here to help you the rest of your life.
So my guy, I wish I could tell you I was the genius. I was just the executor. He understood lifetime value and he understood cash flow.
Jay had really educated me in front of everybody of saying, think about your subscriber and think about the journey they're going to be on the rest of their life. How do you communicate with them from the get-go about the value you plan to provide for them, not just now, but always?
He said to me, Jay, I want you to go to as many media companies, radio, TV, newspaper, magazines, and make a deal where they promote our product for $3 when they have underutilized time. Radio stations always do, magazines do. And if they will, we will let them keep all the money and send them an additional 15%. And we only wanted them to rush the name to us so we could send it out so we could get our second sale right away. Risk reversal. The concept is very simple. Anytime any two people come together to transact anything, one side is always being asked by the other to absorb all, most, or more than all the risk.
Maybe we'd better hasten the wedding.
I've waited for him since I was a little girl.
I had to study, this is a nuance, but I had to study why stations normally wouldn't do that, because everybody was trying to get them to take the risk and most of them wouldn't. I figured out they wouldn't take the risk because A, they'd gotten burned on people who the money went to them and they never sent the station the money. They got burned because the product took forever to get shipped. They got burned because the product didn't uphold its promises. And I realized that if I could figure out how to preemptively evidence to the other side that not only was I taking away the risk, but I was rewarding them throughout the process for trusting me, and that they couldn't not succeed or benefit the way I did it for myself or my clients, they were going to be more motivated to say yes than no, to go forward rather than backward or static.
The last year we did that, we didn't accidentally, we garnered something in excess of $10 million at market value of advertising we did not pay for.
Number one, we wouldn't let them run ads for us unless we sent them 24 jars of the product to have on hand in the unlikely event anybody ever complained they didn't get it. Number two, we told the station to go ahead and bank the money. We just wanted the name right away so we could rapidly fulfill the product. We went from about 1,000 buyers when we bought the company to 500,000 repeat clients in the first 15 months. But that wasn't the gold mine.
We accidentally went retail. In other words, we forced retail distribution. We originally intended only on having it be a mail order product. We had such exposure in so many cities that people started going to their drugstores and people started going to their pharmacists, and we, of course, sold it to them.
We got an offer and we sold it of $60 million just to buy the consumer product.
One of the most impressive things about Jay Abraham is his reputation. Now, a lot of times people have an amazing reputation, but if you actually start to deconstruct it, there's really not a lot of there. Well, when I started getting to know Jay, I studied him. I wanted to understand, how does he do what he does? Why does it work so well? And what can I learn from that? With Jay, you can't look at any one individual piece. You have to look at the entire thought process and how he gets from point A to point B, because there's a dotted line there. Think of it like a breadcrumb trail. You don't know what it is until he gets to B, but man, when he lands on B, you have just gone not just from A to B, you've gone from A to B.
Sometimes the problems we think are unique to us, Jay's like, okay, I've handled that one 12 times, or I've handled this one several times, or I have a story to tell you about this. And those stories, those insights are very helpful to, again, solidify and clarify your thinking. CEOs or people that are in leadership roles have to have clarity of thinking before they can develop effective strategies that will drive their business, and not just drive their business, but drive their business in a way where the people inside that business also prosper.
I read one of Jay's books years ago and followed him, and Grant Cardone had a 10X event last year in Miami, and I took my two kids, and Jay was the main reason we went was Jay. And he answered all these rapid fire questions, and he said he's looking to mentor other people, and it was $100,000, and what all you got for it? And I looked at my son, I said, I'll be back in a minute, I'm gonna sign up. He said, you're gonna pay him $100,000? I said, yeah, that's probably stupid, that's probably crazy. Not stupid, probably crazy, but yeah. And I said, but if I just get one thing from him, then it's worth it. When you can change your business 10, 15, 20, 30, 40% just by another human giving you advice, you need to take that advice.
Imagine if you're getting 20, 30, 60% doing nothing strategic, what would happen if you had 1 or 2 or 3 systematic strategies?
Jay has doubled my income.
Many people that are small, medium entrepreneurs complain to me that they can't hire quality people.
He has doubled my net worth.
And my answer is, if you can't hire them, grow and develop them.
He has tripled probably the value of my company. And that was all by me just taking a leap of faith to pay Jay a fee to be my mentor.
Most people really aren't invested in the growth and the development of a team.
I had a good friend tell me one of the measurements of a leader is not where the company is going, but how well are your people doing inside your organization.
What I find most hilarious when you talk to most companies that have salespeople, I'll say, okay, do you train your people? They'll say, sure. And I'll say, no, I'm not saying do you show them how the products, the catalogs, the
the performance elements? Do you teach them consultative selling? Do you teach them problem solving?
And I think Jay's approach is always about helping the person become a better person first, and then the business kind of follows.
We have a deluded belief we should be able to get people who have all the skill sets we want, and oftentimes we're not willing to pay for it. I've been paid many times by clients 10 times what they paid themselves. And the reason was my relationship was for a duration. They got to keep the company forever. And I didn't own equity. But it's a shift of mindset. There's research that shows that the average entrepreneur gets on average about 20% of the productive capability that your team has the capacity to deliver. And I don't believe the majority of people come into work and say to themselves, I'm going to screw off today and I'm going to do everything I can to be mediocre. How many people here have employees, team members? Okay. One of the most overlooked distinctions about that is that an entrepreneur is on a mission, a crusade. He or she wants the engagement and the enrollment of the team, but they don't always realize that each team member has their own life, their own hopes, their own dreams, their own insecurities, their own family problems, financial problems, and they are in essence hooking their wagon to your star. They're looking for you and your business to give them security, opportunity, fulfillment, satisfaction, purpose. What I think many entrepreneurs fail to do is realize that value is very relative.
Unfortunately, especially in the social media era and everything going on, I think around the world, because I'm a global consultant, I think our society becoming so much for what is in for me. And I think Jay is just opposite of what is in for you. How can I help you, right?
What you might think is extraordinary value, both in what you do for your buyers, your clients, or what you might think is great value in an environment for your team members and employees, they may not really value as high. And unless you're in alignment, you're usually out of sync.
Quality is everyone's business, right? So that means everybody has to be involved into that. So if there's anybody left behind, you cannot say Jay is the mastermind and very effective, but his assistant, if she's not effective, right? His company will suffer, right?
Our rewards in life are in direct proportion to the value, benefits, and contributions we make to others. And I'm not meaning giving to charity, although that's certainly meaningful. I'm talking about just doing more with what you do that brings greater benefit to the people that get it. Does that make sense?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, are you ready? Yes! 这个显然不够能量。Are you ready? Yes! Are you ready? Yes! 1, 2, 3, go! The most well-known marketing genius in the world, Mr. J.
He is entertaining. He makes you happy that you're there.
I never wanted to be intellectual entertainment. My acknowledgement was never it was always go out, make a difference, apply this, grow, prosper, contribute, add more value.
I am flattered by the gracious welcome. Thank you.
In Chinese culture, there's a lot of energy benders and people who throw out energy and bring it back. And that's what Jay does. Jay connects people and he throws out energy. So as he serves, he is rewarded. through service, and it's a closed loop for him.
Most people spend all their effort and time and they pull the trigger and shoot the gun, and it's a singular, static, really tactical outcome, when for the same effort or less, if you think critically, you can make that relationship pay off over and over, not just that way, but over and over again.
When I got a chance to interview Jay for Bulletproof Radio, I'm like, there's a chance to interview one of the top marketing guys in the world. I'm really excited about this. But the story he told was how when he goes to Japan or China to give a lecture to thousands and thousands of people, he actually goes to every floor of his hotel and talks to the wait staff, like people who are making hotel rooms, and just says, thank you for your work, and just like shares his light with them. And it actually makes him happy to do that.
I'm really eager to see what you do. Thank you. Let me take a picture.
So he's set up his whole life where he gets to be curious and help people wherever he goes, and he surrounds himself with people who he just finds intellectually interesting.
I am blessed. You are wonderful, and truthfully, you ask great questions.
I came here today to shift your mind. I hope we have shifted your thinking enough that you won't go back to cutting off both ends of the beef.
This is the beauty of Jay. The sheer fact that he truly loves helping entrepreneurs. Not too long ago, I was playing golf with a guy here in Nashville. He's a very successful businessman. And he told me basically if I was not cheating in business, that I needed to grow up. And I said this to Jay, and he said, he's just doing business wrong. And the fact that Jay doesn't cut any corners, when it comes to ethics, he's at the top. That's hard to find these days. This has become a crazy world.
Over 30 years, I've probably been through 10 or more programs that Jay has done. And often I get asked, why do you keep going back? Don't you get it? And I tell them, no, it's the opposite. I actually do get it. Because every time I go to a Jay program or I have a personal consult with Jay, it's like a process of peeling away an onion. There's a whole nother level of understanding and enlightenment that I get from a business sense that I didn't have before.
I found out Jay he's very attracted to people that are serving the world at a higher level. He sees in somebody that they're out to change something. They're not just out for their own pocket. And I would say anybody out there, to get in place with Jay or to communicate with Jay or have a relationship with Jay, he wants to see that you're somebody that's giving back. I think that's an important thing for him because he's not in it for just, again, filling the pockets. He's in it for world change.
Our relationship started as a business relationship where he helped me, 30 years ago, but it's grown into such a beautiful friendship, and I cherish the friendship with him. I cherish spending time with him because, again, he's one of those few human beings that really, truly cares at this point. He doesn't have to work, he doesn't have to work another day of his life, but he works his tail off in the areas where he thinks he can make a difference, and I respect him for that immensely.
Now I'll give you my last promise story, which is true, and it was a redefinition of the meaning of my life. So I got started at 18, no education, and over the last almost 70 years, I've had 3 midlife crises because I started early. First was at 40 then I had one at 50 and I had one at 60. The 41 was at a divorce where it didn't seem like it was worth it because everything I'd achieved was. The second was I made a lot again and my life didn't change. I wasn't any happier. Every time I'd get a therapeutic need to address my anxiety, I'd buy a hot car. I've had 2 or 3 Ferraris. At one time I had 3 classic E-Jag convertibles. I've had 2 Rolls Royces, a Bentley, 56 Corvette, a bunch of other Corvettes, 3 turbo Porsches. All my problems didn't evaporate, and I was really struggling. They didn't change my life. I'd have 2 weeks of joy, and then all of a sudden it was anticlimactic. So I found a really cool therapist, and I go to him and I said, I'm going to buy you for a week. And I said, here's what the deal's going to be. When I'm ready to talk, I'm going to come, and the hours between 9 a.m. and 5, you're going to be there. If nobody's there, you're still there for me. You can watch TV, read a book, sleep, but when I want to talk, you're going to be there. But if I don't want to talk, I'm going to send everybody in my life who's screwed up, who would never go, and I want you to treat them. And so I would send all these wonderfully colorful people who had all these issues they didn't know they had. And the guy was hilarious, but we finally started spending 4-hour segments, and I'm going to tell you what I got out of $500,000 of therapy that forever changed my life. I realized that the biggest meaning of life is not trying to achieve the fastest growing company, although it's cool, or having the biggest house, although it's neat, the most beautiful wife or the handsome husband, although it's sort of fun for a short period of time. Whatever it is, if you're unlucky enough to get that for that reason, heaven's not going to open, the angels aren't going to sing, nirvana isn't going to happen, you're not going to click your heels and be in Kansas, you're just going to have more problems with bigger zeros on it. And you really are. He said, and I would never forget this, the meaning of life is the process. This conversation we're having is as good as it gets, because I think humanity and humility are the biggest attributes we can possess. You have to love the human condition with all its faults, or you can't really have a meaningful life, whether it's with clients, with yourself, with your family, in your business, in your job, in your marriage, in your relationship. You can't, I don't think. Grow or die.